Hello and welcome to Spotlight. My name is Nuong Faalong, and as always, it's an honor to have you join us and give us 1 hour of your evening. Very coveted time. Ghana's ease of doing business is expected to rank around 122 points for 2021. The business environment is fraught with many challenges as reported by businessmen and women. For minority groups like women and the disabled, these challenges are further exacerbated. How can we make the business environment more friendly for minority groups? Today, I am speaking with 2 women well versed on the topic. Former Miss Ghana and CEO of Innovative Microfinance, Sheila Azuntaba. We are also speaking with Honorable Otiko Djaba, former Minister of Gender and Social Protection. Essentially, tonight we have the women. Before you meet them, we'll go for a quick break and come back to Spotlight. Stay with us. Welcome back to Spotlight, and thank you for sticking with us on MX24, your home for fun, fearless, and factual content. Before we went on the break, I did mention that we have very interesting guests tonight. Former Minister of Gender and Social Protection, Honorable Otiko Djaba, and former Miss Ghana, she doesn't like me saying that, former Miss Ghana and CEO of Innovative Finance. It's a microfinance company that focuses on providing credit for business to women. She is Sheila Azuntaba. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. Honorable, welcome to Spotlight. So I think we're having issues with Honorable's network. So Sheila, welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you.
I know, you know, a lot of people, when we think about you, let me tell you my favorite memory of you. But this is 96?
96, yes.
There was a commercial on TV, and this is how it would go. And it's been playing in my mind over and over again because we chewed it. So it's, you were sitting on a chair, and then it rolls in, and it's like, "Hi, I'm Sheila." And it's been fun for me.
Yes.
And you say, be part of the Embassy Club Pleasure 97. It's excitement all the way. I got it right. I remember more than you do. So after that, you've been off the radar.
Yes.
Have you deliberately gone underground because we don't hear about you? But I know that in the past few years, you've worked a lot in finance.
Yes, I have.
Even in big finance houses like Citigroup.
Yes.
Can you just give us a bit of a brief on that, working with Citigroup?
As you said, I went back to school right after I handed over. Actually, honestly, I took a year off and got myself a job.
Okay.
What I wanted to do was to just have a feel of how it was to work in a formal setting. So I took a job as a marketing officer in an insurance company. And then right after that, a year later, I went back to school. I came back home after my first degree. That was in London. I got a job with EcoBank, and they were generous enough to offer me a marketing position. At that time, we were like junior relationship officers. That was my first taste and where I got my passion for banking.
Okay.
And then...
So it was born with the EcoBank
Yes.
group. Locally made.
Locally made. Thankfully, EcoBank gave me the opportunity to work with them. I learned a lot, but then I realized I lacked a few things, and I wanted to go back to school to do my master's. Then there was a Sheila scholarship, so I applied for it. Went through the rigorous process, and then got a scholarship and went back to school to do my MBA at Strathclyde Business School in Scotland.
Nice.
Then my project was actually something I discussed with my mates. I thought, why don't I come back home and do something different? You know, rather than just do a project where it was to do with an MBA topic on finance, I thought, let me come back home and do a proper research back where I come from. So I went back home and decided to come up with a topic. How was I going to be able to empower women up north in a way that made them responsible to the empowerment as much as I was going to be responsible to them? And that was how I got my project work done, and I emerged the MBA Student of the Year. I came back to EcoBank, generous EcoBank, took me back and gave me back a role, a higher role, and then I got to work. I think a year and a bit into that, I got an offer from Citigroup, but this offer was to move to Nairobi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, not oh wow. I was excited.
No way.
No way,
Okay.
yes. Imagine you get a chance to work with an international bank and they offer you a job in the corporate and investment banking all the way in Nairobi. And knowing Nairobi, it's in East Africa, they're very well advanced in financial services. So I grabbed it. Then I moved to Nairobi and I stayed there for 2 years. I worked with Citigroup for 2 years. Picked up the language, the culture, enjoyed it very much and learnt a lot. I moved from Nairobi to Nigeria, but with the same Citigroup, and this time to a higher position where I had to head, there's a department called the Global Transaction Services, so I got the opportunity to head that department in Lagos. And I think that was where I realized I needed to start my own business. Because, you know, Nigeria gives you something else. You know, it's a very competitive, yes, the hustle, and a very competitive environment.
Yeah.
So right after I resigned and came home, there were two options: to work with a local bank or take a year off, be a mother, and then go back to city and ask them for my job back. Or dust my project and see if I could turn that into a reality.
Real, yeah.
And then that was the beginning of Innovative Microfinance.
Wow, so
Yes.
it was your MBA project
Yes.
turned into like something tangible.
Yes, so
it
basically
wasn't
theory became practical.
Yeah, so it wasn't just you writing a paper and then shelving it like
No,
most of
no,
us
no.
do.
No, this was...
It became something real.
Yes.
Why did you zoom in on Northern women?
You know, I've always had the passion. I've had this passion, and I think the platform I got as a beauty queen gave me that voice. And going around and seeing...
the reach.
And the reach, you know, going around and looking at what this country needed and the contribution by women, it was just so understated and so underrated. And I looked at that, I looked at my project, and I saw how my project touched my fellow students and, you know, with my professors. And I thought, listen, if this was able to get me the MBA Student of the Year, and it can actually be turned into something practical and a reality, why not look at it? And also, I'm from the North. I was the first Northerner to be Miss Ghana, and I know how far back we are, you know, with access to so many things. And it wasn't really difficult for me to decide to give something back. And when you start your own business, you're driven by two things. Are you going to do it to make money, or are you going to do it to impact lives? Is there a purpose behind it? I had all three. You know, it wasn't it's not a charity, it's not a foundation, but it is a socially focused business, which has all the underlying purposes behind it. But I think the driving force was for me to see what I could do to give back.
I like this line. Are you going to do it to make money?
Yes.
Or are you going to do it to touch lives? What did you do?
I combined the two.
Okay. Because you need to eat.
Yes, of course. You have bills to pay.
So when you started, did you get help, or did you just walk into the wilderness alone?
That's actually an interesting question. When we started, we were not regulated. You know, Central Bank, I think, started regulating us in 2013, and Innovative started in 2009. We actually went commercial in 2010. So basically, yes, I walked out into the wilderness. And as a banker, I thought it was as easy as it was going to be coming from a banking background. I got totally overwhelmed. Totally confused and totally discouraged, because the microfinancing, it's totally different from mainstream banking.
Did you have a team? Like, did you build a team before you started, or did you identify your team along the way? How did it go? Because
thing with microfinance is you end up having to you end up identifying your team as you go along. Because the most important thing is to get a team that is like-minded. Because when you're doing something where you're impacting society, it's difficult to convince your team that what you're doing goes beyond the normal that you give. So doing that, took me back, because I had a team, and the team was purely focused on banking, mainstream banking. But when you're dealing with women in the rural communities, you have to move beyond mainstream banking. And that extra mile was needed. And so along the way, I developed my team and then got a few like-minded people to join me.
Let's talk about the business part of it. How did the profit making go? Was it as easy as you saw it on paper? Like, you went in, started making profit from the first month, or did you have to take some hard hits before you got to a more structured point?
It's never easy. It wasn't easy, and it's still not easy. Making money as a microfinance company is a long-term mindset. You don't go into microfinance with a mindset to make money. Unfortunately, I think that is what probably collapsed a few of my peers. You may see it as, okay, I'm able to give money at this percentage, but the cost involved with the operational cost involved can actually consume everything and swallow you up. So it's a long-term process, and you have to have an intentional mindset that what you're doing goes beyond just making profit. Once you marry that and you live with that, every day you wake up, you have to make sure you reinvent yourself to remain relevant, to make your profit, and then also to ensure that you give back to all your stakeholders.
The community.
Yes.
Now, 2001 to today, that's 10 years.
Yes.
2021, 10 years. Yes. I was just going to come to, a lot of microfinance companies have been liquidated.
Yes.
Especially in the last few years.
What
are you doing differently?
I think it has to do with your business model. When you have a business model that works, you have to stick to it. Don't get too greedy. There's always that opportunity to try and move into something different to make a quick gain. And as I said, microfinance is a long-term business plan. The model doesn't work overnight. You don't make money overnight. First off, you're dealing with communities of women. I always use women because they are my first clients, so excuse me if I mention women first. You're dealing with women who take a long time to trust you. They've come from issues that have gotten them to lose all their trust, their self-esteem. They have no self-reliance. So even getting them to buy into your idea that you coming into their community is to empower them as much as they are going to empower you, it takes a process. It takes a long process. And it's not something you go in and, make your quick money and get out. Also, ensuring that people buy into it and believe you, it's a lot of convincing, especially in our society. So it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. And it's still not easy, but what's easy? Anything that's easy isn't worth doing.
Now, as you've been working in that space, what peculiar challenges have you witnessed that northern business women face? We know that all business persons face challenges, but what is the degree? Usually we all have problems, but people's problems have different degrees. What is different about the problems there, especially access to credit?
Okay. Rural is rural.
It's rugged.
Yes, it's rough. I've been to communities here in Accra that I have been shocked. I've looked at deplorable states in which women live or work, and I ask myself, this is the capital of the country. So rural is rural. But up north, the rural is different. Reason why I'm saying this is, over here, even though we have rural communities, there's access, a little bit, and reach is shorter. Whereas up north, there isn't any access. There's no access and there's no reach. So you have women who then have to come together to save themselves. So what we did, or what we're doing every day is, when we go into the communities, it's not for us to sell them a product or a service. Innovative microfinance, what we look at is to provide a solution. And the solutions are tailored for each community and for each sector, or what it is that they do. And that has been difficult and also challenging, and also exciting, because you can go into a community and you have to come up with a totally different solution. And we pride ourselves in providing solutions. We don't go there selling you a product that is for everybody. But rural, up north rural is there. We have challenges, we have issues, and it's just not access to finance alone. You know, everybody always tells you, if you ask a woman, oh, what can I do to help you? I want money. But when you dig deeper, the issues are beyond money. The issues are beyond credit. You've got high illiteracy rates. You've got gender issues that goes against them. You've got social practices and social norms that goes against them. Access to social justice, access to infrastructure, access to even just equal rights. Problems. All the problems, you know. And I usually say that it's when you get up north that you realize that you're not really fighting for equality with men. We can never be equal, given. Naturally, we can never be. But it's just fighting for equal access to certain resources and infrastructure that should be made available to both
And that's
genders.
the focus anyway. Access to equal opportunity and resources. Now, someone sent me an interesting question, and he wants to know, you see all these problems are more intense. I mean, there are women in the south who face these problems.
Yes.
But in the north, it's like, you know, sometimes you feel like it's cut away from the country because it's hard for different policies to reach the north. Why didn't you just choose to have your microfinance company in Accra and deal with women in Accra or women in Kumasi, Cape Coast? Why did you take on the extra burden?
I get asked that a lot. You remember I told you my passion has always been to help impact. And I love to push change. I didn't think I was going to be effective if I started it here, because there's so many of us here, and the access and the available help for the women, endless. But go up north, you know, the gap was there, the need was there, but there was no solution. And nobody was willing to go at that time, even when we were not regulated, to provide them a solution. I took it upon myself to provide them a solution and hopefully get that recognition. And when we started getting regulated, we were the third company to be regulated by the central bank.
Nice. Wow, wow. Let me just quickly go to Honorable Otiko. Honorable, we haven't left you out of the conversation. The line was bad. Can you hear me now? If you can hear me, kindly unmute. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Right. I think we're still having some network challenges there. What my producer is going to do is try to call you on phone so we have a more stable connection. Thank you so much, Honorable, but technology is not being our friend this evening. But we're going to come back to that shortly and talk to Honorable Otiko Afisa Djaba, former Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection. Let's look at the challenges that you mentioned. You mentioned that some of these challenges even affect their self-confidence.
Yes.
Do these ever extend into business, the challenges that these women face? Because you're giving them money.
Yes.
The money is a sensitive thing. You expect that even if you don't make profit, it should come back to you. Do people ever tie their problems to the monies that you're giving them?
Well, yes, sometimes. But you know, one thing I have to share with you is what I have found with working with the women, whether it's up north here, whether it's rural or urban, is I haven't met any woman who hasn't expressed their desire to be somebody or do something for themselves. Even as rural or as remote as we think or we see them, each woman feels that they must birth, they must give birth. You know, and I tell my staff that, you know, it's interesting that every woman gives birth. You know, some give birth biologically, but each woman has it in them to birth something. You know, it could be to birth a business, to birth an idea, to birth, you know, a nation. It could be anything. And these are things that are very important to educated women. And believe you me, they're as important to the rural women as they are important to us. They also want to do something with themselves. So when you talk about all these challenges, yes, it's a very risky area to get into as a businesswoman. We've had our fingers burnt, but we haven't relented. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'll keep doing it, keep improving, and then ensuring that we make all the risk, we lessen the risks we face. But having said that, yes, sometimes when you go into a community, there are a lot of issues that would, you know, make it impossible for you to advance help. We've got up north, and you're from the north as well.
Yes.
We've got a lot of social norms. We've got social practices, cultural practices that sometimes prevent women from accessing financing directly. So you have to include sometimes their husbands. We've done a few projects where husbands have been, or the men have been the sole beneficiaries of some of our facilities. Did it work? Not so much. You know, we thought, okay, once you empower them, then the entire household is taken care of. But what we realized was when you empower them, then they have different needs other than the household being empowered. So we went back to our original, where we empower the women. And as much as it's important to empower them, there's still that insecurity with women who feel that they're not good enough.
Right.
They don't have what it takes. So you have to get it out of them. So we have lengthy classes with them, financial literacy class. Sometimes it goes beyond that, where we talk about how...
So you're doing more than just giving
Oh
them
yes,
finance.
that's why I
You're
said
teaching them.
microfinancing has to go beyond just giving them money.
Wow.
Because to make them responsible to you,
Yeah.
you have to also be responsible to them. They have to see that you coming into their community to help them isn't just to get their money or give them funding. Because sometimes even the women will refuse the funding because they've been bent in
Many
the past.
times.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but you have to tell them that, hey, I'm here to give you something extra. The fact that when I leave, you have to be self-reliant. And for me, that is what
Because
we
you won't
strive
give
for.
them money forever.
No, there's no free lunch. And even if you have to pay back, your business or what it is that you do has to get to the stage where you don't need me anymore. And then I can move to another community to give them the same benefits.
Give me a moment. I'm going to come back to you. I want to know what you do when they are not able to pay back the money. Because I'm sure some situations have arisen like that.
Yes,
But
yes,
let me
severally.
quickly go back to Honorable, who we have back on the line. Hello, Honorable.
Hello, Nuong.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us on Spotlight. It's the first time we're having you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be invited.
Thank you. It's our honor. We are hoping that we can catch you a few more times when we need you. Honorable, let me just zoom in before the network disappoints us again. There are so many areas to deal with. Why did you choose people with disabilities?
Because they are the most vulnerable in society. And my father lived with stroke for 30 years.
Wow.
And he became a person with disability. And so after I decided to opt out of politics, my next passion is development. And it was the place that I felt most needed.
Now, let's look at doing business in that environment. How do we put the disabled women in touch with business opportunities? Is it easy to begin with?
My organization is a non-profit organization. It doesn't only look at persons with disability. It also focuses on vulnerable women and young girls. And so I would prefer to talk about the three groups of people.
Please,
It
by
is
all
not
means.
easy working with anybody, whether they are abled people or persons with a disability, whether they are women or they are girls. Human institutions have various challenges, and people from rural Ghana, people who are vulnerable, have extraordinary challenges. And so, in as much as you would think that working with persons with who are not persons with disability would be easier, it's the same everywhere. As a women's organizer, I also worked with various women. And so we need to understand that every human institution has its challenges, whether you are a woman or you are a girl or you're a person with disability. The difficulties with the very vulnerable is that about, I would say 70% of them are not literate. Education is a huge challenge. And so when you're working with such groups, you need to understand that you must use different methods, not necessarily in English. You might use the different dialects that they are comfortable with. And with persons with hearing impairment, you might also need to have a sign language interpreter. So that is additional costs and things that you will have to add to the training to be able to bring up to speed. In terms of getting them ready for employment or getting involved in training skills, you have to make it as simple as possible, not to use big English words, but very simple language. And one of my lecturers told me that the best English or the best language is the most simple. And so, given the fact that I'm able to speak about 8 Ghanaian dialects, it makes it very, very, very easy for me to flow in the different dialects. And we always have other capable people depending on what the issue is.
Honorable, you mentioned the challenge of education, which resonates with what Sheila said, because her microfinance company has to sometimes teach the rural women a lot of skills.
Yeah.
Now, what is it about our education that, where is the deficit coming from? Why have we failed to bring these people along? Because disability shouldn't mean not being able to fully partake in education. What is it that we are not doing to carry them along?
You need to understand that Ghana has a Children's Act. Every child of school-going age is supposed to be in school during school hours. Unfortunately for the girl child, for example, in rural Ghana, we think that they should get married. So there is childhood marriage, or they will be betrothed, or used as house helps and what have you. For persons with disabilities, even worse. The society or the community or the family tends to think that anybody who is a person with disability is a burden and they should not be in school. And so it is important for us to understand that every child of school-going age must be in school and stay in school until they are out of school. And so in rural Ghana or with persons with disability or with vulnerable women, if you are not educated, then you have a handicap as well as your challenge of being vulnerable. A lot of the young girls in rural Ghana tend to come to the north because of migration, and they end up doing kaya. That makes them vulnerable. Some of them run away because of abuse or whatever reasons, and so they become vulnerable. In terms of women, they might be domestic violence, they might be out of a job, they might be housewives who depend on a man for money. And so they are also vulnerable, or they might be survivors of cancer, breast cancer, or HIV/AIDS. That makes them vulnerable. The persons with disability have serious challenges. However, they have the right to be educated. And so it is the lack of enforcement that makes it difficult for them to be in school. And the fact that a lot of the time we think that Accra is Ghana. We need to get to the
I
hinterlands,
mentioned
to
that
rural
earlier.
Ghana, and let the Ministry of Information use their vans for everybody to know that every child must be in school, especially the girl child. When the girl child is in school, her children, boys and girls, will also be in school. And a person with disability could be a girl or a boy. And so it is critical for the as-related development of Ghana for everybody, whether they are persons with disability, vulnerable women or not. Everybody has the right to be educated, and we must give them that education. Those who are adults without education, they are about 80% in rural Ghana. And there's a need for them to be engaged in adult education so that they have literacy and financial skills training to be able to get them to be competitive. This is a very competitive world. Once you don't have the formal education, especially literacy in English, literacy in business management and financial literacy, then you are left out. And that is not good enough.
Honorable, I like this angle of, it seems there's some unequal response here, even though, sorry, education is supposed to be accessible to everyone. We see that there is extra challenge over here with rural women, with people with disability. Let me digress a little bit. During COVID, we know that these issues have become even more present, especially for women and girls in the rural areas. You mentioned some of them are made to get married. During COVID, we knew there was a lot of increase in caring work, increase in domestic duties. So a lot more girls even had to leave school than previously recorded, so they could take up these roles, because unfortunately, in our society, especially in the rural areas, these burdens come back to women and girls. Now, was there any intervention to, especially during COVID, to lessen this impact on the people that you deal with?
On my part or the part of government?
On the
my
part of the foundation, yeah.
Okay. On my part, we organized training programs in Somanya
Okay.
for women and persons with disability who had been affected by their jobs or who had been affected by COVID and lost their jobs. And so we gave them skills training, entrepreneurship skills training in financial literacy, in business management, in mask sewing, soap production, sanitizer production. And then we gave them startups to be able to give them equipment and tools and materials for them to start, because some of them were hairdressers, some were pensioners, some were traders who had all been affected. And so we only were able to work with 10 people with the support of Plan International. We also worked with the community to educate them on the protocols of hand washing and the usage of sanitizer and social distancing. And that one covered about 600 people in the area who also went out to disseminate information. On the part of government, they had the COVID fund and the activities that were also engaging people in how to better sanitize, engage in using the masks, and then the social distancing. Food was distributed to the vulnerable and what have you. And so a lot was done, but as we say, Oliver Twist is never enough.
Yeah.
Especially for vulnerable people. And you understand that persons with disability, especially those who use wheelchairs, have to be pushed by other people. How well are they using the protocols? Are they wearing masks? How are they breathing on the people they are pushing? Somebody who doesn't have a wheelchair probably walks on his hands or on his buttocks on the ground. So you can understand that that person is more at risk. Persons who cannot see might be led by somebody, and all those people, once another human contact comes in, how well versed are they, and how are they enforcing the protocols of COVID-19? And so you will see that persons with disability are more at risk. Sometimes you see them begging on the roadside and they don't have a mask on, and somebody in the car is giving them money. Or the person in the car is not wearing a mask and is giving the money to somebody who is on the street begging. It could be a person with disability or a child or whoever, or buying from the young girls, the hawkers and boys. All of these people are at risk. And they go back home, and they might also have families, also affecting others. So it is very, 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 very hard for all people who are vulnerable during this COVID-19. And it is important that the nation should understand this, and organizations like civil society organizations should also come on board, supporting them with the know-how, the knowledge about good hand washing, about wearing your mask, about social distancing. If somebody is pushing a wheelchair, how often does the person wash their hands or sanitize? And the person who is also in the wheelchair, how are you able to afford the masks and the sanitizer? And in rural Ghana, where there's no running water, who is going to fetch the water for a person with disability to be able to wash their hands often? How are they going to afford the sanitizer itself? And if you are in a trotro, and how do you manage the social distancing and what have you? So there's a need for a lot more education on all these protocols and how we can survive COVID, because it is here to stay and man must beat it.
Honorable, I like that you say Oliver Twist asked for more, because we always say that the interventions are never enough, because we also see that the space of intervention is dominated more by development organizations like the UN, United Nations Population Fund. We also know Plan Ghana, Plan International. Now, what do you think have successive governments done enough to prioritize economic independence of rural women?
Well, you can't say that they have done enough. It's a journey. Governance is a continuum. Each government would come and do what they can within their time or their tenure of office, and then the next government will go on. And so successive governments have been able to put various interventions into place. If you look at right from PAMSCAD, when former President Rawlings was in power, they brought a lot of food, yellow corn and what have you. Those were the times that we had the Rawlings chain and what have you. That was an intervention. In terms of President Kufuor, when he came, he moved the National Council for Women and turned it into the Ministry of Gender, so that there's a machinery for the issues of women and children. And then it became the Ministry of Women, Children, and Social Protection. Those are all interventions to alleviate poverty in women and vulnerable groups. We also have the LEAP, which is a livelihood empowerment program, as well as the LIPW that supports vulnerable people at the community level with livelihood and income generating activities and funding. We have the MASLOC that is there for everybody, and I can tell you that about 80% of MASLOC is for women. There used to be the Women's Fund in local governance for women contesting in district assembly elections. We have the women's groups and the Hunger Project organized by Estoklu. It is no longer as functional as it used to be, training women in how to make industrial products like the palm oil and the jam and what have you. And so various governments, and if you come up to speed, this government is continuing with the various interventions like the LEAP and the MASLOC and what have you. We have the YEA, which is largely for educated groups. And we have educated groups in rural Ghana. We have persons with disability who also are educated. And so they benefit from some of these general activities. We have the interventions about one district, one factory, the interventions for one village, one dam, the free SHS. All those things are areas of intervention that all the vulnerable groups should be able to tap into. The other area is the fertilizer scheme from the Ministry of Agri, where they subsidize fertilizer for various groups. And I understand that about 30% goes to women. My only worry is that the best farmer is always a man, and
Okay.
there's time for gender balance. So
Yeah.
this year, we want to see that it is a woman who is nominated as the best farmer because she is capable. And
Right.
the women have been contributing. 80% of our small-scale industries are all handled by women.
Right.
And so COVID or no COVID, women are here and we do the work. 51.2% of our population are women. 3% of our population are persons with disability. When you add the two, that is the majority, 54% plus. And you cannot leave them out. Ghana cannot afford to. We've been making a big mistake in leaving them out or not allowing them to move forward. So when I say allow, what I'm saying is that if you are not allowed, women and persons with disability, take it. Because rights are fought for, even though it is your right to have this or that. If somebody is not allowing you or giving you your right, you must fight for your rights, and that requires knowledge. There are people who don't even know that they have the right to education, they have the right to sports, they have the right to good health, they have the right not to be abused. And those are challenges that the nation and the district assembly and the various structures and duty bearers must work together seriously to bring us all to speed. You cannot leave anybody out or behind. When they're talking about the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, Ghana will be given an account. And if
Right.
you leave some of these people out, what account are you going to be able to give? And that is why, for accelerated development, we must add the women and the persons with disability and ensure that the various interventions are well understood to enable them to take advantage of them. If a woman is in the village and there is Maslock and she's not aware of Maslock, how is she going to tap into it? Or that there is a fertilizer scheme or seedlings being improved seedlings being given by the Ministry of Agri. How is she going to take advantage of that? So we must look at the formal education and the informal education to be able to get everybody up to the point in terms of technology and what have you, to ensure that we are all benefiting from the resources that Ghana
That
has.
are
And we are
available.
contributing our quota for ourselves and our communities.
Right. Now, Honorable, you see, the issues we found with some of these interventions is that they are available on paper, but the access is a different process altogether. For example, you mentioned the fertilizer subsidy. In fact, about 2 weeks ago or last week, I had both the Ministry of Agri and farmers in the studio, and there were so many interesting challenges that were revealed in terms of access. Now, beyond all these policies that we have, do you think we need to develop something specific, like a policy document that specifically addresses women and access to these business
We
opportunities?
already have that. We have the gender policy. Ghana is one country that has signed almost all the policies that the UN has, the Children's Rights Act, the domestic violence, eliminating it, all the laws that you can think of. Ghana has signed them and the protocols. We don't need any new ones.
So what do we
It is the
need? Because,
implementation
good.
and the enforcement that is necessary. If you go into the gender policy, you would realize that they have a strategic plan for all these activities to enhance the contribution of women and our development, as well as persons with disability. Every ministry has a gender policy, and so there is no need to create a new policy. It's important that the policies that we have are strengthened and enforced and implemented so that we all benefit from them. There is a law that says that there shouldn't be female genital mutilation and that no child, that means between the ages of 0 and 18, should be married, and that every child of school-going age should be in school. So why are some children still being
Still
married
not
at
in
16
school.
and 9 years? Why are girls migrating and doing kayaking, and you see them on the streets? Who
Right.
is asking them to go off the streets? When I was a minister, I initiated Operation Get Off the Street Now for a Better Life. And we started moving people off the streets into vocational skills and what have you. I remember that we did a program for about 400 girls, teaching them catering, secretarial skills, and what have you. And then they passed out. But where are the jobs? Who is employing them? And so it is a holistic program, and it is a journey, it's a process. You cannot just take people off the street. Mind you, about 50 or 60% of the people on the street are also foreigners. So you need the embassies to come on board to ensure that all those who are under 18 are in school if we are going to enforce the Children's Act, which we must. That means you will get about 60% off the streets. The persons with disability who are also children can be in school. And then we have the vocational institutes, the TVET and what have you. Accra Rehabilitation Center, every region has a rehabilitation center. So all the persons with disability who are adults, that is above 18, who are not able to go back to the formal school, can have a vocational training. And I'm telling you, in the next 5 years, we'll be able to clear the streets and ensure that every child of school-going age is in school, especially now that we have the free SHS. That means from kindergarten to free SHS is free. And parents must also bear the responsibility of providing uniforms where the uniforms are not provided. I know that in rural Ghana, uniforms are provided, school books and bags and what have you. But you can't have everything being given to you for free. And so parents must have a responsibility. But that comes with education, understanding that they must send their children to school and not keep anybody out of school. And those who are not in school should be able to learn a vocation so that they can be financially independent and they'll be able to take care of their families, especially when they get involved in relationships and the man's job spoils, or the man's, he has an illness, or he dies, unfortunately. A lot of the time when these bad things happen, it is the woman who is burdened. And so every woman must have a skill, must have an income-generating activity to be able to develop herself, manage her family and her children and her community. The time has come for us to understand that unless every woman and every person with disability is educated, is engaged in income-generating activities, Ghana will always be where we are because they will be a burden. But if we are able to support them to achieve these dreams of educational heights and income-generating activities, I believe that we can attain the Sustainable Development Goals and we will be able to mitigate extreme poverty and ensure that we move people from extreme poverty to wealth creation. Ghana is the best country on this earth, and it is possible for us to use our natural resources and share them equitably so that each one of us will be able to say that I came as a Ghanaian, I'm proud to be a Ghanaian, and I'm happy to live in Ghana.
Thank you so much, Honorable. I mentioned to you before that we have the women. As you have been listening to Honorable, it's very clear that we do not have issues with formulating policy or formulating interventions. We do have them, in fact, in abundance. But how to actualize these policies and interventions and make them accessible to everyone, that seems to be the challenge. Implementation is the challenge here. Now, how do we surmount this challenge of implementation? Only through holistic approaches where everyone gets involved. So it's not just one department or one ministry's job, but everyone's job. Now, let me go to Sheila, who I was asking earlier. Now, you go into these rural areas. Honorable mentioned another point that you shared about educating the women. You have to educate them to also be responsible for what you're offering them, to even recognize the value of what you're offering them, and be able to be responsible to you too. Now, the big question is, what do you do when they don't pay back? In fact, when they can't pay back. Because also, another thing that we notice is for women, it goes beyond their personal ability to what is going on at home, to the pressures that domestic life and social life, religious life is putting on them. So sometimes they default, even when they don't want to. What do you do?
True. You know, even though sometimes, or more often than not, the women are the beneficiaries of our facilities here, what happens is ultimately the decision is made at home sometimes. So once they get home, that money can be diverted. We get it all the time. Now, I think Honorable mentioned about, you know, everything that was done last year to sort of help people when the pandemic,
people,
yes. For me, or let's say microfinancing, especially when you're not a foundation or an NGO or a charity, and you're regulated, you have to report back to your regulators that you're doing a good job. It was extremely difficult because you do have defaults. Fortunately for us, most of our loans, or 90% of our loans, are insured. They're insured against death and permanent disability. So we have that bit covered. But we don't have the bit where cash diversion and just recalcitrant clients. Bear in mind, women can be very stubborn, very stubborn. If she decides not to pay, she can just not pay, whether or not she's been influenced at home or not. So you have that as well. What we have done is with education. Honorable said it has to be, it's education, because it's a vicious circle and education is key. It starts with education. If they're educated on the benefits, the risks and the challenges, and also the issues they will come up with if they don't pay back, ultimately they have a certain level of fear of God in them. Because bear in mind, microfinancing, a lot of banks with deep pockets should be doing that. You know, it's more of a quantity business than quality. You need numbers to make returns. But banks shy away. You know why?
Difficulty.
It's difficult.
Challenges.
Let me tell you, it costs the same amount of money to administer a 2,000 Ghana cedi loan and a 200,000 loan. Which one would you go for?
Wow, 200,000,
Of
because
course.
the returns are more. But here is one important thing.
And also, you're working with historical data. It's easier to analyze such a facility. But with microfinancing, it's not. You don't have historical data.
Okay.
You go into a community and
Rough land.
yes, and you have all of these factors, so it's more expensive. But the good thing is, once you really get it into them that you're here to help them, and that level of responsibility is embedded in them, you actually begin to see the benefits. These women need help. They appreciate the help. But what they don't also want is that the help comes and then there's a break. So it makes them harder to impress or harder to buy into your concept. So it has to be a continuous thing to get them out of poverty.
Like, you know, it's a partner in business. You want someone who's reliable,
and consistent.
someone who's dependable and consistent. Now, I remember I was at a forum with you on women in business. There was another forum we attended that was organized by the Netherlands Embassy. Now, Mr. William Terrier of Zen Petroleum was there, and he mentioned that one of the most reliable people in his business, he has come to trust women. Women do the job better. Women bring him more returns. Women are more honest. And he even went further to outline how his losses have been reduced by simply employing more women. And you won't believe it. He had very interesting figures. Now, there was also Mr. Gajepo from Enterprise Insurance, and he talked about the contribution of women to his business, which was significant. Now, we know these statistics are there, that women are dependable, women are able to turn the resources you put into them around, multiply it, and have it impact other people. But how do we get more people interested in the area of providing finance to business women? There were 2 years ago, Ghana had the highest number of business women in the world. Ghana ranked #1. I think this year we're like number 2 or 3. But the very serious issue there is, although we have the highest number of business women, we also have serious challenges with these business women accessing finance. So most of the businesses remain on a small scale because they have started, they are working hard, but there's no investment. How do we make it attractive to the people who have money to come into that space and say we're going to help women, and in the process also make profit?
That's interesting.
Serious question.
Very serious question. Listen, it's You said something about us dropping to number 2, right? We used to be number 1 in terms of the number of female entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Why did we drop?
Difficulty.
Difficulty.
Because people, you get frustrated.
Exactly.
When you are not able to access what financing and other things that will help you, and you drop out. You know, everybody starts a business, but it's not everybody who will succeed in business. So people fall off. So what can we do?
There's a lot. Okay. Honorable talked about what government has done. And yes, it's true. We don't need any more policies or policy documents drawn. You can't reinvent
more action.
Yes, you don't need. But it's the implementation and the education. And it has to be a combination of both efforts from the private sector and the public sector. Government does its bit, yes. Is there scope to do more? Absolutely. Absolutely, even right from the government side. But also the private sector needs to wake up. And when I talk about the private sector, I mean the financial institutions. There's the need to realize that when you empower grassroots women, or let's say women-owned businesses, you're actually helping to empower everybody. You know, we do a lot. We know that when somebody entrusts you with money, your job is to ensure that you give it back. It's something that is embedded in women. Unfortunately, yes, if you do fall on the way, but ultimately, majority of women believe that when you advance me that help, my responsibility is to ensure that I don't let you down. But it is difficult because the economic situation and the environment makes it difficult for even financial institutions to think it's viable to go into those communities. It has to do with a lot. Infrastructure, poor infrastructure. All the social practices.
Especially in the north.
Yes, and especially in the north. The cultural norms, all these things work against institutions wanting to get into these communities to help. But is it lost? No, it's not. I know that increasingly a few financial institutions are beginning to come up with desks, you know, with resources towards agency banking and going into the rural communities. They've got the deep pockets. In terms of training and bringing in capacity development programs, they can do that. We need more of those. The implementation is lacking, and enforcing it is non-existent. We have all the documents, we've got all the policies, we've got all the programs, but who is there to push it? And you can't wait on the government all the time. We do it as innovative, and I know a few of my peers are doing it, but we need to come together to have that collective voice and that strong voice to do that. Now, when you get yourself into microfinancing and deep into microfinancing, the chances that you end up losing are higher. Are higher because you're dealing with the impoverished sector of the economy where you can't charge them the rates that you can ordinarily charge in the urban areas. So you have to have a way where you have a strategy that brings you partners. Unfortunately, we are not able to get partners or impact investors locally. It's just something that education hasn't sunk in, that locally we should have impact investors. So we go abroad.
Impact investors. You
know, we go abroad. But locally, microfinances need the support of impact investors. You don't need the support of traditional banks because our business model
Are you willing to work with impact investors?
Of course I am. I work with a few. That's how we get our funding.
Okay.
You know, we are not able to generate the local or the funding that we need locally to scale up. So we have to go out to talk to impact investors. And they understand the need and the importance to get involved to ensure that they can help bring you up and scale you up to a point where you can stand on your own. And then they move out.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Our time is up. Although I want us to keep having this conversation. So I'll just take closing remarks from Honorable Otiko. If you're still on the line, please sum it up for us, and then we can be out of here.
Yes, I wanted to say a quick hello to Sheila and say that she's an epitome of what young girls should be like. The girl child becoming an adult, transitioning from a Miss Ghana to an entrepreneur. She's a big role model, and kudos to you, Sheila. I hope that other young girls will emulate what you're doing, and that if Sheila can do it in spite of the challenges, then she can also do it. So I would want to say that the Djaba Memorial Foundation is focused on persons with disability as well as vulnerable women. And we want to look at the transformation and how we can work together with the various individuals, the traditional rulers, the duty bearers, government structures, and other NGOs to be able to transform our people so that they have a better life, have a good quality life, live in dignity, and understand that you are a human being in spite of your vulnerability, in spite of your challenges, in spite of your disability, and that nobody should disrespect you because you are a person with disability or, for example, a survivor of cancer. We also have a wheelchair challenge that I'd like to talk about, and that is how we can call to action 16,000 wheelchairs so that we are able to acquire 1,000 wheelchairs per region. And it is a challenge to see which region will be the first to be able to donate 1,000 wheelchairs to the Henry Djaba Foundation, because Ghana has over 187,000 physically challenged people. And so our aim by November is to acquire 16,000 wheelchairs. And you can call on our Momo number, which is 024 851 0067, or you can donate to that same number, 024 851 0067.
Awesome.
And lastly, when women are given facilities, there should be no partisanship in it, that because my party is in power, I shouldn't pay. If you don't pay, you reduce your chances of getting somebody else. So it must be part of the education of the various micro financing companies and the policies of the understanding that there is no free lunch and there is no free money. And so it is a loan and you have to pay it back. You must have financial literacy and you must have literacy itself in terms of how to open an account, how to write your name, sign, so that nobody cheats you. And the women in the groups should not take a man as a secretary, because invariably the man runs away and they are left with the debts.
Thank you so much, Honorable. We've run out of time, although I want you to go on and on and on. Now, if you want to get in touch with Honorable Otiko Djaba, please, you can do so through us, me on social media, Nuong Faalong, or through our social media handles, MX24GH on all social media. If you want to get in touch with Sheila Azuntaba also to, in any way, contribute to the business of providing finance for rural women. Remember, at 51% of the population, that's women, and 3% of the population for the disabled, a total of 54%. That's a significant number. Any country that is not targeting resources and development to this portion of their population does not belong in the future. My name is Nuong Faalong. Thank you for joining us on Spotlight. See you again tomorrow, same time, 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. It's been an honor. Good evening.